That strikes me as an appropriate reaction to the Eucharist. Here's a second image from Ronald Knox, the great 20th century theologian and apologist. Knox said something which has always struck me. He said, let's face it, 99% of Jesus' commands are obeyed at best in the breach, right? So love your neighbor, love your enemy, pray for those who curse you, turn the other cheek. I mean, let's face it, most of us disobey Jesus' commands most of the time. But, Ronald Knox said, strangely, there is one command of Jesus that has been massively followed up and down the centuries. Despite our sin, despite our stupidity, despite all of our weakness and failure, somehow the command, do this in memory of me, has been followed, hasn't it? It's as though Christ himself realized that I just have to intervene and make sure these people do this, that this is so central to what it means to be a disciple of mine. Do this in memory of me. Despite everything, we do it. And a third little vignette or a little image, and I'm sure by now everyone knows this story. One of my great heroes, Flannery O'Connor, I think the greatest Catholic fiction writer of the last century, when she's a very young woman, is out for dinner with Mary McCarthy and other big-time New York writers. And she was a young woman, shy by nature, and she felt totally overwhelmed by this company. She said, I felt like a dog who knows one trick but had forgotten it. So the conversation is going on, and Mary McCarthy, who was a lapsed Catholic, but she was trying to draw O'Connor into the conversation. She knew she was a Catholic. She said to her, I think the Eucharist is a wonderful symbol. To which Flannery O'Connor responded, as you well know, if it's only a symbol, I say to hell with it. And that qualifies her, in my judgment, as one of the great Eucharistic theologians of the 20th century. Now, mind you, sometimes you'll hear people say, people that say things like that don't understand the power of symbolism. Not in her case. Are you kidding? Flannery O'Connor, one of the great symbolic masters of the 20th century. Read A Good Man is Hard to Find, read Parker's Back, read Revelation, read All That Rises Must Converge, all her great novels and stories. She fully knows the power and import of symbolic language. She knows how to create symbols, how to use them. She knows the effects they have. She knew all about symbolism. And yet she says, if that's all it is, to hell with it. She gives voice there, everybody, to something which is absolutely universal in our great tradition, across space and across time. There's something more in the Eucharist than the merely symbolic. And so the 70% of people, of Catholics, in our Pew Forum study, we got a problem if we're not teaching this truth. Okay, so here's what I propose to do in the brief time we have. I want to kind of walk us, that'll be a quick enough walk, through some main points in our great tradition to try to show you that there is a golden thread that runs from the Bible up to our time, affirming the reality of Jesus' presence in the Eucharist.